All right, it is officially 7 o'clock. Hopped on here a few minutes early. I see Chris Brown in the house. My man, how you doing? Phil and Elizabeth.
Good.
How you guys doing? And last but definitely not least, Andy and Kelly Arnold with the Kelly Belly hashtag. What's up, guys? Andy, I'm not sure I've ever seen the hair with the middle part like that. You're looking good, my man. You're looking real good.
Thank you, sir. Yeah,
I like that.
Like, should I wear a hat? I'm like, no.
Yeah, usually you got the snapback going on, so I can appreciate this right here. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. I know a few people are joining in late, but I want to be respectful of your guys' time and also our incredible panel tonight. Just a few kind of quick details for you guys. If you want to chat me at any point in the privately, you can just chat over on the right hand side. You can chat to Austin Payne. I'm the host of the video, and so if you want to chat to me if you have a question, we'll try to get to the questions. We asked our leadership team a lot of the questions. If you're wondering what's behind me, also it says happy 4th birthday in a tangled world, so not to be distracting, but happy 4th birthday to my niece. That was lovely. So, but if you have a question, you can ask it to me privately over in the chat at any point. We have received a bunch of questions from you guys as our students, and then some of our interns who are recent graduates of high school, kind of still living under their parents' household or graduated, and still have that relationship with their parents. And so we're going to tackle tonight everything from, man, I live at home with 2 parents that both love the Lord. How do I steward that relationship well? We're going to talk about, man, I have divorced parents. How do I do that as I'm going back and forth between mom's house and dad's house? We're going to talk about arguments and fights and how do we do that well? And so we've gotten a really awesome broad stroke of questions that I'm really excited to dive into with our panel. Probably the last thing I'm just going to say before we dive in is if you change your Zoom by now, I know you're all professionals at Zoom, but if you change it to speaker view, rather than seeing all of the little bubbles, speaker view will show you the person who's talking. And so that's usually helpful for me when I'm watching a Zoom call. I can watch the person who's talking, and rather than seeing all of my friends on here or clicking through the pages or chatting with somebody on the right hand side. But just real quickly, can we do a little rundown? Chris and Amy, I'll start with you guys. Number 1, how long have you guys been married? And number 2, how many kids do you have and where do they fall in the like age bracket, in your house, out of your house, teenagers, not teenagers? Give me the Brown background.
Well, thanks for having us. And let me tell you.
I guess that's my cue. We have 3 teenagers. Sayla's 19, Karissa's 17, and Beric is about to be 15 on Monday.
So we don't know if we're doing this right yet. I'll let you know in 10 years, but we're going to be here for the dumb tax.
Right.
What you don't want to do, we've nailed that. How long have we been married?
We've been married 25 years this coming August, the end of August.
Is that like a big one?
That's kind of a big one, yeah.
Wow. Heck yeah.
Thanks for the heads up, Austin.
Yeah, I got you. And I love that part of it, though, that you're in the midst of parenting teenagers, right? And you have one graduated high school, Karis, who's now in 11, 12, went through 9, 10, and then Bear, who's about to be in 9, 10. So you're really fluent with this age group, at least in experience over the last couple of years going, oh, 9th and 10th graders, we have a lot of them. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being on here. Kelly and Andy, we'll go over to you guys. How long have you guys been married, and where are your kids at in the teenage bracket?
Well, I'm responsible for that one. We've been married for 22 years, and our oldest, Kennedy, is going to turn 18 in July, and our youngest, Brock, is going to turn 17 in July. So gone through the North Coast system, and we're just hoping that, we have some advice. Because we're like most parents, we're just winging it and hoping everything goes well. So
heck yeah. Love it. Awesome. Well, thanks for being with us tonight. And again, same thing. We have Kennedy in 9, 10 now as a leader, as an intern for us, responsible for all things that look awesome in 9, 10 and creative. And then Brock, just coming through 9, 10, now a senior. We love Brock a lot. So excited to have you guys on here. And then Phil and Elizabeth Payne, not necessarily teenagers, but working with youth ministry for a long time, thousands of high schoolers kind of coming through your guys' household, church, now with 4 grown kids, grandkids. How long have you guys been married? And then how many kids do you guys have?
Well, it's awesome to be here with you guys. Thanks for letting us hang out. We are coming up on 34 years in November for how long we have been married. And I'll let Elizabeth talk about our kids.
We have 4 grown kids. Amber and Logan are both married. Amber has 4 kids. Logan has 3 boys. Natalie is our next one, and she is married and has 3 little kids. And then Austin is our baby, and he and Paige are getting ready to have a baby.
Hey, yo, that's me. That's me, still the baby of the household, y'all, forever and always. Okay, I'm going to dive right in with our first question, and it's going to be for all 3 couples in the panel. There'll be other questions where I direct specifically at a different couple, but this first one, I'm just going to ask all of you. This one came up a lot when I asked leaders, students. This question was kind of a question that several people asked, and I think it'll be really helpful for us as 9th and 10th graders to hear. And the question is this: it's how do I, as a 9th grader, how do I, as a 10th grader, how do I serve my parents better? That seems like something that a lot of people want to do, but maybe don't have the best idea on how to do. How do we as high school students serve our parents better?
Do you want us to just chime in?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess for us, I mean, one thing is like we all live in a common space, like in our house, and this house belongs to everybody. So everyone kind of has a part in taking care of it. You know, we all have responsibilities around the house. So just kind of like making sure that they're taking care of those. It's nice when they do it when they're not asked. You know, I remember parents saying the exact same thing, like, I just want you to do it without being asked. And I hated that when I was younger, but now I feel it now. I'm like, can you just do it because you see it needs to be done? But making sure that you're like keeping up with stuff around the house. Something else I was thinking about was that you can serve with your words and your attitudes around the house. We've had situations where one of ours has been maybe upset or angry about a situation and sort of just lets everybody know, and he wears it on the outside, and it affects everybody, you know, not just yourself. And I don't think people realize sometimes that your actions and attitudes affect everyone. And so learning how to handle those maybe disappointments or things you're upset about in a more like responsible way. And but then on the other, and then something else I think that another way you can serve is maybe just by asking your parents, like, how are you today? Like, how was your day? Because we're so good about like, what'd you do today? How was school? You know, what did you do? And I remember it was literally just a couple months ago, and one of mine was like, mine was good. How was yours? And I just thought, oh my gosh, did you just ask me about my day?
Tears flowing down your face.
I just want to know how I'm doing. And it was awesome, you know? And so just kind of thinking outside yourself, coming outside your bubble, realizing there's other people around that, you know, you care about. And so just kind of reaching out, can I make dinner? I'm like, oh, heck yes, you can make dinner.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that you mentioned that service isn't just, it's not just physical things, right? Because I think that's the thing that probably a lot of our minds go to is chores around the household. And that can absolutely be a part of it, of doing things without being asked. That's massive, right? But service can also be our emotional state at home and being willing to kind of deal with those and make sure that we're asking good questions of our parents, but then also making sure that our attitude's in check. That can be an aspect of service. That's awesome. Thanks, Arnold's.
I think I would jump in there and say, I think one of the ways you can serve your parents really well is to live in harmony with your siblings. You know, I think sometimes, you know, your parents, they're man, hopefully they're getting after teaching you and challenging you, modeling for you. I think to the best of your ability, living in harmony, finding ways to serve maybe older brothers and sisters, younger brothers and sisters, just simply taking on the role of unity and harmony in the house and bringing a spirit of that unity. I think that would serve your parents in some tremendous ways.
That's cool. That's cool.
I'd love to chime in and say that if you don't know how to serve your parents, just ask them. I'd love it if my kids came up to me and said, hey mom, what can I do for you today? I'd be like, whoa, just like, you know, you
She'd
said,
love it if I came up and said that
just
too.
like you said, like, how was your day? It'd be like, if they just said, hey, what can I do for you today? It'd be great. So yeah, I think simple things like that, because I think everybody's parents are different. So for us to say like a blanket, all these other ones have been amazing, but if for us to say a blanket thing, like each parent is different and they have different needs. And so, you know, I might like somebody to do acts of service where Chris might like somebody to
change your attitude.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's good. That's good. Hey, Browns, I'm going to stick with you here as we transition to our next question. Probably, believe it or not, the service question was the number one question I got. The number two one was about conflict. And I think that's kind of no surprise when it comes to parents, as we all experience that conflict and we get into arguments. And probably the question that was probably the one that came up the most was, when I get into a disagreement with my parents, what can I do as a student to make sure that it doesn't turn into a fight? Of going, how do I disagree with my parent? And as I have my own thoughts, my own opinions, I'm now 14, 15, 16 years old, right? You're really starting to form your person, and you're starting to have your thoughts, your outlooks on life. How do I disagree with my parent in a manner that's not always just a fight and it's not disrespectful? How do I do that?
that's good. That's a great question. We have a lot of that going on in our house at this time, because I think, you know, having people that have voices and have opinions and have, you know, stands that they want to take about stuff, they are supposed to, which is good, verbalize what they're feeling. And that's a good thing, but that can be such a challenge.
I think the answer to, so much of this comes back to kind of basic building blocks, 10 commandments. And for all of you teenagers that are watching out there, you've got one of the most radical places in the entire Bible, and it's in the 10 commandments. Your first 4 commandments are all about God. Don't have any other God. Don't have any idols. Don't misuse his name. Keep the Sabbath. The very first relationship commandment, so the very first commandment, not between us and God, but each other, is what? Children, obey your parents. Honor your parents. This is pleasing to the Lord. You're going to have long life. The Apostle Paul in the New Testament will say it's the first and only commandment that comes with the promise. So just think about that. When it comes to conflict, as God wrote these commandments, you were given the very first human relationship commandment. It's almost as if to say, if the family is healthy, the home will be healthy. If homes are healthy, neighborhoods will be healthy. If neighborhoods are healthy, cities will be healthy, states will be healthy, nations will be healthy. The family is the building block for God's economy and God's kingdom. And the very first commandment is to you guys. So when it comes to conflict, it's okay to disagree with us. It's okay to have different opinions, but you do that keeping, how do I do this while still honoring, not dishonoring? How do I have a different opinion while respecting, not disrespecting? And how do I do that with mom and dad? And for some of you, you know when your parents are about to blow. You know when you pushed it, and you're like, something's about to hit the fan. And just know, if that countdown is getting to 10, make sure you walk away at 6. You know, make sure part of honoring isn't keeping your mouth shut and being a doormat. Part of honoring is knowing how to disagree with respect and honor and not pushing buttons before it gets there. And so, part of that is I love the fact that your parents brought up, you know, keeping that sibling dynamic, you know, and that peace in the home. But when it comes to conflict with parents, as much as we want parents to be the adult and parents to be the authority figure and do the right thing, I really put it on so many of you right now to go, stop before it escalates. Walk away. You know this thing's heading to an explosion. Why take it there? Be the bigger person, even more mature than your parents, and walk away before it gets there. And learn how to honor and respect in the midst of being a teenager, trying to find your own way, trying to find your own authority, and getting out of there before it blows up.
Yeah, let me follow up on that, Brown, because I think that's such a good point of knowing your fuse and knowing the point where you're going to, that volcano is going to erupt. And right, when we say walk or count to 10, there's actually like science behind that, right? Of your brain responds better if you pause. And so many of us have that, our quick impulse is anger or frustration. And if we literally hit the pause button on life, we can respond more patiently and with more grace. For somebody like me, my go-to in conflict is to shut down rather than, and if it escalates too much, I'm just going to go, okay, I'm out. When we walk away, like you said, how do I do so in such a way that's not disrespectful, right? Because I can almost hear that as a teenager and go, oh, walk away? Gold. I'm way good at that, right? But how do I not storm off? How do I not walk away and be disrespectful by turning my back on my parent? How do I walk away in a way that's beneficial, not disrespectful, even in my walking away?
That's brilliant that you caught that, because walking away could be a greater sign of disrespect. And so stating why, look, it's obvious where this is going, or look, this is going to lead to a point of no return, or this is about to blow up. I got to walk away. We got to talk about this once I cool down, or once you cool down. So given a reason for it, not just turning your back and giving the hand and saying, because that is an ultimate sign of disrespect, but being engaged in a conversation. So if you just start by walking away, that's disrespectful. We're talking about engaging in the conflict. How do we work this out? Realizing it's getting to a point and letting them know right there, being the bigger person, even with parents, like I said, and saying, look, I got to step away because this is about to go, to someplace bad. I got to step away because this is about to blow up. And so I think stating why you're stepping away and saying, we can talk about this later. I can't talk about this right now. And coming back and letting your parents know when things have cooled down, this is where it was going, or this is what I was feeling, or I saw you get into level 10. And from now on, respect it when I have to disengage, knowing I will come back and solve this. So it's entering into that conflict, getting to a point where you pull out and letting them know why I just got to step away right now. I just got to leave.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Arnold's Pains, anything to add on there?
I think what Chris was saying is awesome. I think just communication in general, the idea of being honest and communicating is sometimes so difficult for teens to find their own voice. Like, this is how I feel. And if it's a differing opinion, that's okay. Like, an argument is supposed to lead to further knowledge. It's not supposed to be, I win, you lose. And oftentimes we look at differing opinions as something to win. Like, that's a conversation I won. And I know I struggle with that. I know that's been a difficult part about parenting, is I need to win certain situations, but winning doesn't really cause a lot of learning. And so as a teen, if you're going to talk to your parents, you have a different opinion than them, a way to not escalate it to a fight is just say, hey, I want to know what you think about this. This is what, and then maybe you can listen to what I think about this, and hopefully maybe we can gain something from each other.
I'm not sure if it was Larry or one of the pastors recently had said something about.
It's probably Larry.
I think he's a smart one, right? Yeah.
It was like, seek to understand, not to be understood. And if you're in
Was it Chris?
Brad's like, it was me.
Yeah.
But I think if you're seeking just to be understood, like, do you understand me? You're not going to get anywhere. They're going to shut down. But if you can be in a place of, I want us to understand each other, because I think that knowledge is power. And so the more that you can understand each other and have that like peaceful conversation, I think you're going to get a lot further. And they're going to be more receptive. Like, both parties, I think, will be more receptive to having that conversation. And I think it's huge about knowing buttons. Like, you and your family, which buttons are whose. And ultimately, you want peace and something to be resolved. And so if you don't want it to go there, don't push buttons. And it's really hard in the middle of wanting to be understood, but staying away from pushing those buttons that kind of can set someone off, because that's not going to lead anywhere good. So
yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Arnold. Hey, Pains, I'm going to jump over to you guys on this next question. It's a challenging one, and it's probably the one that breaks my heart the most as a youth pastor to Fuel 910. And it's the divorce rate right now that we experience in families. It's astronomically high. And to your point, Brown, that the first command is honor. When God's talking about the family structure and his design for family, his design for that to really, for it to ripple out from the family into cities and into the way that we're supposed to operate as societies. When it comes to broken families and divorce, a lot of our students split time between mom and dad. And the question posed from one of our students was, and again, I'm going to go over to you, Pains, on this one, just how do I love my mom well and my dad well when I find myself under both of their roofs? And sometimes the conflict between them, I get stuck between that. And I don't want to make it worse. I don't want to add on to it. How do I, as a son or as a daughter, how do I love my mom? How do I love my dad well when in the midst of a divorce situation?
Jump in there.
I think, unfortunately, in this situation, this has been referenced already, that you might need to be the grown-up who says, hey, look, I don't want to be in the middle. Could we talk about how I can honor and love you both well? And you might have to set some ground rules and ask some questions about how they would like to be loved, how your mom might like to be loved, and how your dad might like to be loved. And then you might need to just share what it feels like to be in the middle and begin some conversation by being vulnerable yourself about how that feels, because they maybe haven't thought about how you're feeling, or their stuff might be big and they might be not realizing the impact that their stuff is having on you.
I think a couple things that I think about too. I think that's good. I think no matter where or what externally your mom or dad would say, they never saw themselves being there in a situation where they are divorced. When they walked down that aisle, when they got married, it wasn't their intent to get a divorce. Now, divorce happens. We know that. A hardening of your heart, it's difficult. But I think even asking God to give you some love and compassion and grace for your parents in the midst of that situation, and know that it's difficult to single parent. It's difficult to have a divorce, that they're in a tough situation. I think the other really practical advice that I think I've shared with students is try to avoid the comparison game or the playing one off the other game. You know, it's easy to say, well, mom does this or dad does that, and almost manipulate the situation and really, really work hard not to manipulate that situation, because that's not going to go well in the long run. It might feel good in the moment, but in the long run, that's going to come back to really bite you. So I think asking God for grace, for love, back to that serving question, it's amazing what happens when you serve your parents, when you serve your family, and the opportunities you get, the trust you build in that. But it's really difficult. You may have to seek out some counsel. You may have to seek out some additional advice of saying, hey, I'm in a really tough spot with my mom, my dad. It's unreasonable, and I need help. And so don't be afraid to ask for help. Ask a life group leader, ask a pastor, ask somebody at your church even to help you walk through that situation, because there's some difficult, tough days.
Yeah, that's so good. Anything to add on to that? Arnold's, I know you guys work with a lot of high school students. Andy, in the classroom situation. Brown's, you guys have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to working with divorced people and students as an ex-youth pastor, now as a pastor. Anything to add on to that?
We have a little bit of just experience with divorce in our kind of extended family. And one thing for the kids that are involved, they're so good about just not saying anything negative about either one of their parents. You know, like if they're at mom's house, there just really isn't any talk of dad, or if there's, vice versa. And so they're really just playing like that neutral field, and which is awesome because it doesn't stir up any gossip and it doesn't cause you to go down a road that you don't want to go down. And so just, I really am proud of them for that. But it's hard because I think you want to be the fixer, or some people just want to be the fixer and they think they can fix it, but it's really not your job. And it's kind of between them. And so trying to stay as neutral as possible and keeping the peace. And then another way I would say too, that you can honor your parents in that situation is when maybe you are with one or the other, that you're really present, because they might get to see you less than they would normally get to see you. And I would just say, just to really be present and giving them all of you is just a way to kind of honor them in that situation.
Yeah, I love that honoring piece of, as somebody who had parents that stayed together, sometimes it was still tempting to play them on each other, right? To go like, I know that dad's usually more likely to allow me to do this, right? I know that mom usually is the one that says yes to this. And so you go to the one that you think will let you do it. I can only imagine, as somebody who's living in a divorced household, that would be infinitely more challenging, right? To honor and to respect when you're not under the other's household, and yet to constantly commit to that, as go, I will not be somebody who's manipulative. I will not be somebody who dishonors or disrespects. And yeah, that's a huge challenge for students. That's awesome. I love that. Browns, any last thoughts on that one?
I think you nailed it.
Cool. I'll come to you guys with our next question, Browns. It's a lot of our our students who have given their lives to Jesus and have been baptized at a camp, whether it was Whitewater or Loma or Sahale, or if it was baptized at some other point while they were at North Coast, have now gone home to non-Christian households and live in a household where mom doesn't believe or dad doesn't believe, or sometimes mom and dad doesn't believe or don't believe. And they, some of our students, even some of our core leadership students, find themselves as the only follower of Jesus in their household. What does it look like to go home as a missionary and do that well? How do our students live that out? Because I know that's so challenging. Of coming to church on a Wednesday or on a weekend and being in your life group and going, wow, this is fulfilling and refreshing and challenging and pushing me. And I go home to a family that they kind of look at me crooked and go like, why? This is so weird. Why are you into this Jesus stuff? How do our students do that well?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I know, we were in youth ministry for 16 years, and most of that in the inner city. And 70% of our group did not come from church families. 70% of our group didn't come from Christian homes. So they were the only Christ followers in their homes. And man, we struggled with that a lot. And a lot of students coming in just so frustrated and beat down. And yet I always encourage them, and I know this is going to be convicting for those of you that are watching in that thing. Your true Christianity is who you are at home, not who you are at church. The real you is, where are you with your parents in conflict? Where are you if it's a single parent, when you disobey in your arguments? Where are you in your relationship with your siblings? That is a much truer indicator of where you are as a Christ follower than how you are in the youth group, even how you are in school. The real us comes out at home. Amy, the last thing Amy wants to do is watch me on the weekends teach about marriage and healthy marriages when she knows I'm a complete moron here at home, or I'm a terrible husband. She's like, you can get up and teach it all you want, but the real test of what type of husband I am isn't what I teach on the weekend. It's right here at home. And so just let me encourage you, students. It is going to be the hardest place to live it out, but it's also where you're going to have the most in touch with the Holy Spirit in your life, and where you're going to have the most growth in your life, because you're going to learn there where the rubber meets the road, in conflict with siblings and non-believing parents. What does it look like to really hold on to God and trust? And more than anything, it's not about your words. It is going to be your actions and attitude. How do you honor a mom and dad that disrespect your faith? How do you honor a mom and dad that may disrespect you? That honoring father and mother was done within a Christian, Christ-following, confines of a mom and dad that are loving you unconditionally. So many of your students, their parents don't love them unconditional. Their love may be very much conditional. And so for you to go, okay, I'm going to show my love for Christ in how I honor my mom or my dad or my whatever authority figures in my life, that's it. Not by my church attendance, not by if I'm reading. That's where it's going to be. That is obedience. And so I encourage you, it's your actions and your lifestyle. And we watched so many moms and dads start coming to church simply because their kid over the last 1.5 to 2 years changed dramatically. And they finally wanted to come and go, what was this about? From where he was at 16 to where he is at 18, something's been happening on this little corner of Holt and Gary in Pomona. And a parent had to finally come and go, okay, you won me over because of how this kid has been acting in the last 1.5 years. And so, man, I just really encourage you, your actions and your attitudes. And when I said you really meet the Spirit's given us all gifts, and God's will for our life is to change us from the inside out, to grow us and to use us to impact others. So your growth and your impact is going to happen at home. When you are committed to that, you're going to find the Spirit more at work in your life than ever before, because you are walking in step with God's will. God's will is for you to honor them at home. When you start walking in that, you're going to meet a Spirit in your life that's going to help produce that in you and through you. Well, I got preachy on that one.
And if you feel like there's no way I can do that, I mean, it's the same Holy Spirit that is in Jesus that raised him from the dead, that's in us, that allows us to be able to have that power to have self-control and have, love when we don't feel like loving, and to have patience when we don't think there's any way we can have patience with our brothers or sisters. And so the Holy Spirit in you will give you that strength that you need. You can't do it on your own. It's impossible. But with his strength, you can totally do these things.
And this will give you a spiritual strength and confidence for the rest of your life when you can do this at home. Because one day you're going to have to work for a boss who's a jerk, and you're going to go, I can do this because I know what God did in my life at 16. One day you're going to get into a marriage and realize, ooh, this isn't like the brochure. And you're going to go, you know what? I can do this because I did this when I was 16. One day you're going to get into a situation where you find out there's a health crisis, a financial, and the hard things in life, you're going to be able to look back on and go, I committed to walk that hard road. I've seen what God has done in and through me. That's going to give you the strength to handle whatever it is you come across in life.
Yeah, that's so good. I think it was also probably Larry Osborne that said something like earning the right to whisper, just kidding. I'm pretty sure I learned that one from you. And I think that's so powerful for our students who are Christians in non-Christian homes, but I think it's really powerful for students that are Christians in Christian homes as well, to go home and earn the right to whisper through my attitudes and actions. And I hope every single one of our students writes that down at the top of their note sheet right now and just goes, my attitudes and my actions prove that I'm a follower of Jesus. And they don't earn you the right to be a follower of Jesus, and yet they should always be the fruit that's produced when they go home and live it out. I think every one of our parents, both our Christian parents and our non-Christian parents, should go, what's going on at North Coast Church that you come home desiring to live out what Jesus taught, and desiring to live with patience, and desiring to live in harmony with your siblings, and desiring to serve because Jesus said we'll be known by the love that we have for one another, and that love is marked by service. I think our non-Christian parents should be shocked by it because they don't know where it's coming from. And I think our Christian parents should be pleasantly shocked by it because their Christian students are actually living out the values of Christianity.
Well, and I think exactly that truth, that the opposite side, contrary, is true as well. If you're coming home and you don't have a desire to live out your obedience with your siblings and your parents, you might want to think what you're going to, because then you're a member to a club, not Christianity. If what you're doing isn't changing your desire to live this out, you're going to a youth club. You're going to a YMCA with a cross on top, but it's not being a Christ follower. Because if you can't live at home without a desire to honor your mother and father and start working on their sibling relationship, that's what Christ wants to produce in you. And if that's not being produced, you might want to start by looking in the mirror and ask yourself, am I lying to myself?
Yeah, that's so good.
I think too, Austin, a quick thought on that. I think most students, you've come to Christ. You went to that camp. You've been in a youth group. You've seen the reality of Jesus in your life. And man, a lot of students say, I want that for my parents. I want my parents to know Jesus. And how do I do that? And you think about the impact that a life lived well. I think it actually came out of North Coast, that relationship is the bridge that truth walks across, right? Chris talked about being a missionary in your home. That's probably Chris as well, Brown. I'm sure anything good coming out of North Coast, there's Brown, right? Or Andy first, and then Brown takes it public. But either way, that idea, Chris, you talked about being a missionary in your home. Any good missionary, good mission strategy is going to build a relationship with the people they're working with. Even if we think about, we talk about what are the 3 greatest sermons you've ever heard in your life. If we just ask that question, you'd have a hard time coming up with 3 great sermons. You might have a hard time coming up with the last sermon that you're not, because we haven't heard a lot of great sermons, but name 3 people that God has used to impact your life. And now we can come up with that because God uses people. And man, as students want, God, use me in my home. That's the impact. That when you're really living out your Christianity and you're living out your faith at your home, not necessarily with your words, but with your actions, that's how God is going to impact your family. And what a cool thing for your parents to see Jesus in you as a student.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Our next question was, and it's kind of a cool bridge to this one, was how do you bring up Christianity with non-Christian parents? But I think both of you answered that in a really cool way of going, make sure we are living it out before we start talking about it. Because I think a lot of the times we can get really excited about Christianity, or we might even hear like some cool apologetics that we want to talk about, like the proving the existence of God. And we come home all fired up about Christianity and doctrine and theology. And we go, this is what I want for my parents. but maybe the bridge hasn't been built yet there relationally. And so we make really poor missionaries, just like you're saying, Dad, of if we went into a foreign context or an inner city context or whatever missional context it was, and we just hit the ground running with the gospel or theology and going like, you need Jesus or else you're going to hell. Like that's not a super great mission strategy. And although, it's been tried before and I'm sure it's worked a time or two, I think the better strategy is that how do we live it out and then build those relationships? And I think allowing the Christian conversations to flow from that place of attitudes and actions is such a cool one. We have one or two more here as we wrap up. Arnold's, I want to come over to you guys on this one. And the question is, how do I foster a deeper relationship with my parents? I feel like I have a relationship with my parents. And I think this is true a lot of our 9th and 10th graders of we coexist in the same space, but maybe there's not a lot of depth there. And maybe that has to do with busyness. Maybe that has to do with, I got sports and school and friends and video games and social media. I have a lot going on. And yet, I think at the core of us, there is that desire for the depth of relationship. And what are just maybe some of those very practical, very tangible tips and tricks on fostering a deeper relationship with my parents?
I would say at this age, I do not want to generalize, but this age group can be a little bit like a little self-centered and thinking like the world revolves around them sometimes. And so at least we went through that with our kids. So I'm not going to generalize, but just being willing to look outside yourself and maybe like, what are your parents like? Like, does your dad like to surf? Does your mom like to go thrift shopping or whatever it is? And then being willing to go do some of those things. I think it's time. Time is huge. Just being willing to spend time together, because during that time is when conversations happen that might not happen at home when you guys are all sitting in front of the TV or everyone's like off in their rooms or whatever. So carving out time and being willing to just be together, and conversations happen naturally, which will in turn kind of like deepen your relationships, and parents too, being willing, like many times my daughter, like I'll be in the middle of like working on something for school and she's like, you want to go to a thrift store? And I could easily say like, oh, I'm kind of busy, but I don't, because I know that like if I give up my time and I go spend it with her, something good is going to happen. And so I think for all of us, it's just realizing like there's nothing more important than your family. So be willing to give up something that you might want to connect with them, and hopes that maybe an awesome conversation will happen and you can kind of grow closer.
Cool. Heck yeah. Love it.
Yeah, I agree.
Love it. Love it. Hey, I just want to close with this. We have 100+ people on here on the Zoom call of 9th and 10th graders that are hungry. We all have relationships with our parents, and some of them are broken and some of them look differently than others. Some of them are single parents, divorced parents, non-Christian parents. For the 6 of you, maybe I can just get one from each of you packaged in like a sentence or two. What would you say if you had kind of free reign to talk to Fuel 910 as we all have parents? What would just be your piece of wisdom that you would go, man, if I could leave you with this as we close this, let me just give you this, and let me challenge you with this, or let me give you this piece of wisdom. What would that sentence or two be for our community?
I think my sentence would be to be intentional. You're not going to have a great relationship with your parents by accident. And I think sometimes we leave it up to our parents to say, well, it's their job to be parents and my job to be a kid. But if what you want is a great relationship with your parents, be intentional. Make time. Ask them out on a date. Sit down at the dinner table and ask 3 good questions of your parents. Write them a note just expressing your appreciation. Find ways to be intentional and build that relationship with your mom and dad.
I think I would say pray for your parents. And those of you that have non-Christian parents or Christian parents, ask them how you can be praying for them.
I'm going to piggyback off what Kelly said in the previous question, which is time. Spend time with your parents. They may not be the coolest people ever, but you might find out that they're cooler than you thought. But if they have interest, if they do things, ask them about that, and find as much time in your life that you can to spend with them. And time isn't just being in proximity, because we all sit next to each other on our phones and don't really communicate and don't learn anything. But the idea that you're going to have a conversation, that you're going to learn something, and that you're going to go out and possibly do something together. I think just time spent builds relationships.
I think also really quick, offering grace to your parents. I feel like we're all just kind of trying to figure it out daily, like minute by minute sometimes. And so we aren't perfect, but we have your best interest at heart. And so sometimes parents might mess up or say the wrong thing, or but just realizing we are human, we're trying to do the best that we can, and we'll offer you grace, and we hope that you can give us a little grace as well.
That's good. I would say all of the above. I agree with all that. Those are like precious gems to, for teenagers to hear. My thing would be communicate. Just be willing to share what you're doing that day, what your plans are. Even ask, even if you don't feel like asking for permission. That just helps your parents feel like they're in the loop and that you actually care and that you respect them enough to, keep them aware of what your plans are. I feel so great when I have kids that do that. It makes me feel like, oh, they actually think that I care, and I do. I want them to know that I care. So giving them the just the respect of communicating what you're going to be doing, I feel like that is huge.
Yeah, and on kind of that closing shots of giving them a break, I know you have great expectations. You want your parents to be doing the right thing and always be right and knowing what's right for you. Your parents are just big kids who are broken people. They've got a sin nature. A lot of them didn't have great parenting themselves, so they're painting by numbers here. They didn't have a great example. They love you to death, and they are more afraid of you than you are of them. And most teenagers don't understand that. They have a lot more to lose when it comes to you than you have when it comes to them. And they're trying their best. They're not getting it right. They're afraid to admit failure sometimes and weakness in front of you, because it's sort of like, the grasshoppers. If the ants really knew how much they outnumbered us, we're all going to be taken out. And that's kind of parenting right now. And so see them for who they are. They're broken people who are trying their best. I love what Kelly said. Give them some grace. Give them a break. Communicate with them and come alongside. It amazed me how many students didn't realize that parents were more afraid of their kids, than the kids are afraid of parents. Having teenagers scares me to death right now, and where they are and what they're doing, or losing them. And I'm holding on for dear life, but we don't know if we're doing this all the way right. And so give us a break and come alongside. That's what I'd really encourage you to do.
Awesome. Hey, well, Chris and Amy, Kelly and Andy, Phil and Elizabeth, thank you guys so much just for taking time on a Wednesday night. And I know 45 minutes at night around dinner time isn't the easiest to give up, and you all have kids or places you could be other than this, but thank you for just loving 910. Thanks for loving our community so well. We love you guys. This whole thing's recorded and it's going to be thrown on our YouTube. I actually had to boot my staff about 10 minutes in because I only have 100 people limit. And I had to say, leave. We need more students to be able to get in here. So thank you guys for being on here. Thanks for sharing your wisdom. It'll ripple beyond just this Zoom call. I know I learned in the midst of this. Our students learned in the midst of this. If you don't believe me, just check out the chat on the right-hand side that's blowing up right now. We love you guys a lot. Thank you guys for taking the time and pouring out this just wisdom on our community. We learned a lot from it, and I know it will be impactful in the families of Fuel 910 at North Coast Church. So with that, we love you guys a lot. Again, this is recorded. It'll be thrown on our YouTube, if not tonight, tomorrow morning, first thing. And ta-ta for now.